And in this series, we have learned that every relationship has a climate. Every relationship that you and I are involved in has a climate. And that climate could be bright and sunny. That climate could be dark and scary. It could be cold and snowy. But every one of our relationships has a climate. In fact, a forecast can be made based upon the climate of that relationship. We can forecast with great accuracy what's going to happen in the long term of your relationship based upon the climate of that individual relationship. In addition to that, we also recognize that you yourself have a climate. Everywhere you go, you bring a climate with you, and your climate has a tendency to affect or to change the climate of the relationships that are around you. And so we've been focusing on this, and last week we spent our time talking about that our own insecurities affect our own climate. Our climate we can't see. We have to ask someone else to tell us what is our climate, and hopefully we gave you an assignment several weeks ago where you were supposed to ask, what is it like to be on the other side of me? And hopefully you got some positive feedback. It was difficult to take that feedback because all of us have insecurities that we're trying to hide. We hope no one asks us about that. We hope no one sees that about us, because ultimately all of us are afraid of rejection. Every single one of us, at some level, is afraid that we're going to be rejected, and that comes because of our own sin. We have been separated and rejected by God. And so we run around afraid that people around us are not going to receive us, they're not going to accept us, that they are going to reject us. So the world, without God, tries to figure out an answer to their insecurities, and what they think is that self-esteem is the answer, feeling good about yourself, having a positive outlook, feeling positive about who you are, solves that, but it doesn't. In fact, you can think that you are good, and people can tell you that you are good and that you're okay, but still someplace underneath all of that, you recognize and you have your own insecurities. Whether you are rich, whether you're beautiful, everybody has insecurities. So the solution to that, we discovered last week, is not self-esteem, but the solution is acceptance. Acceptance. That's what dissolves the fear of rejection. When we are given unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, that's what calms that. And what ultimately has happened is that Jesus has accepted us. God, through Jesus, has accepted us so that you and I are now accepted through Jesus Christ. And that's the most important relationship we can have. And when this world rejects us, when this world says, no, I don't like you, you're not good enough, you're not tall enough, when a spouse looks at you and says, I'm done with you, when your employer looks at you and says, I'm done with you, God accepts those of us who trust Him, and with that acceptance, we can survive anything that comes into this life. The Scriptures teach us about climate change and teach us about relationships. So today what we want to do is today we want to focus on some of the things that affect our climate besides acceptance. There are other things in our relationships that challenge us, that have a tendency to affect our own relationships, have a tendency to affect ourselves, and we want to talk about them. And so let me go from the very beginning today to tell you what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this morning conflict. That's what we're going to talk about. Because every relationship that you and I have, every single one of them, at some time or the other, are going to be affected by conflict. Now it's kind of very interesting what the Lord does to me. I don't know if the Lord does stuff to you to mess with you or not, but He does lots of things to mess with me. And so He knew, because He is God, that I was going to preach on conflict this week, and He knew that I was going to talk about how you deal with conflict. I'm going to give you all these slick ideas and all that kind of stuff. So the Lord God Almighty decided to send me conflict, all right? And not just on a low level, but everywhere I turned, there was conflict. There was opportunity for me to use the material that I'm going to bring to you. Sometimes the conflict was brought to me. I wasn't looking for it. Sometimes I brought the conflict to other people. Sometimes we just kind of met in the middle with our conflict. But I've had more conflict to manage this week than probably any other week in my life. And so next week, our sermon topic is going to be holding bunny rabbits, okay? Cuddling kittens, and eating chocolate ice cream. That's what we're going to talk about next week. So if any of those ideas you like, come back and join me next week, because we have been dealing with conflict this week, and that just happens because you know what? Every relationship Every relationship at some point is going to have conflict, every one of them. And unresolved conflict will kill a relationship. It doesn't just wound it, it doesn't just damage it, it flatlines the relationship. And so what we want to do is not to ignore or to have conflict that's unresolved. What we want to do is to try to figure out how do we resolve conflict, not run from it, not hide from it, because conflict is coming. It is. And even when you love somebody, there's going to be conflict. You know, if I would ask for a show of hands this morning, who had conflict on their way to church this morning? Now, this is okay unless you're riding by yourself. And if you're riding by yourself, then we have a whole other sermon series for you, and you can see Joey afterwards. But if you ever drive to church with someone, whether it's your children or your spouse, I don't know about you. That's the reason I get here early and I drive by myself. But if you've ever been in those situations, it seems like we're going to church, and church is a prime time for conflict, right? Anybody marry someone who has just a different clock than you do in your world? Anybody marry somebody like that? My poor son this past week, he set his alarm clock, and he's getting up early to run, and so he set his alarm clock, and the alarm clock went just when it was supposed to, went off at precisely the right time. However, he had set his clock incorrectly, and so it was an hour earlier than what he thought it was, but that clock went right off, and some of you have married somebody who has a different clock when it comes to time and getting ready. Some of you have children, and they don't even own a clock at this point. They still sleeping in bed, and so you've got that kind of challenge. So what we want to do is to talk about how do we deal with unresolved conflict or conflict in general so that we might resolve it, because if we don't, it's going to kill relationships. It's going to kill relationships. So we want to try to find out how to do that, and the Bible is full of material that teaches us how to interact with people around us. Now, there are two kinds of people, and when we think about conflict, there are two types of people when we approach conflict. And one type of person is what I'm going to call the embracer of conflict. These are people, and you may be one of them, you may be living with one of them, you may know one of them, but these are people who love conflict. In fact, they just run to conflict. In fact, if things are going well, they will say something on purpose just to create conflict because they enjoy it so much. Anybody that I'm talking about? I mean, don't point them out. No, that's very rude. Don't do that. But do you know somebody? Because they'll just say, me? You're talking to me? What do you mean you're talking to me? Well, let's go talk about this. So don't point them out, because they'll want to have conflict with you. These are people who just rejoice in it. They love to argue about it. They love to do it. They'll go in the foyer in between services, have conflict, and they have a great time with that. And they're going to sit here today and go, what do you mean conflict, unresolved conflict? I'm all for conflict. I love conflict. I embrace conflict. I don't have any unresolved conflicts in my relationships. To which I will say is, oh, yes, you do. Because when a person who is an embracer of conflict embraces conflict, the rest of us, which I think make up the majority, avoid conflict, right? There are avoiders of conflict. How many of you are avoiding conflict? How many of you do that? See, you're raising your hands. You're like, I don't want to have any conflict with you, so yes, I'll raise my hand even though I don't believe that. Most of us, I think the vast majority of us, are wired up to avoid conflict. And what the embracer does not realize is that when the embracer embraces conflict and wants conflict, the rest of us shut down, don't we? Now, the embracer doesn't know that. The embracer thinks they won the conflict. They think because we're not engaging them and we're not talking to them, they think they've won. But they haven't won. They have lost because they have unresolved conflict, because the rest of us, the majority of us who are avoiders, we retreat and we just let you think that you won in that conflict. But we never resolve the conflict. And so over time, the embracer wakes up, looks around, nobody's around. They go, where'd everybody go? Oh, wait, what happened to everybody? We thought everything was fine. You were always quiet and you never responded. And the avoiders, which are the majority of us, saying, you don't even get it. We can't even buy you a vowel. There's no way you're going to fill in the puzzle. And so we just shut down. And guess what happens to that relationship? It dies. It dies a horrible death. And what we want to do as believers in Jesus Christ, who has transformed us through the Holy Spirit, continue in our lives, what we want to do is to figure out how we can embrace conflict, not in a negative way, and not avoid conflict, but actually to come to conflict and resolve it. And what we're going to do is just look at one passage of Scripture. There's lots of Scriptures about that, but today we're going to look in Proverbs chapter 3. Now, I don't want you to look in your Bibles today, okay? Most of the time I say, go look in your Bibles, and we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 3, but I don't want you to do that because I'm going to play a little fill-in-the-blank game with you, all right? And so if you've already looked, then you have to leave and come back for the later service because you've already cheated. So don't cheat on me. Don't look at your Bibles for just this morning, just this moment, because what we want to try to do is to fill in the blanks, because the Scripture says some really positive things that if we embrace them in our lives, we can see conflict become resolved in better ways. Now here it is, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3. It says, let not blank and blank forsake you. That's what we're going to look for, okay? So we're going to fill in two blanks. It's not that difficult, just two blanks. Let not blank and blank forsake you. Bind them around your neck, literally attach them to your throats. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and in the sight of man. Now that's the English Standard Version translation of that. There's other words that are used there, and we're going to have to unpack some of those. But if you are looking for favor and good success in the eyes of God and in the eyes of in the eyes of man, if you'll do these two things, not a 100% guarantee, because the Proverbs are not 100% guarantees. These are oftentimes insights by Solomon, the second wisest man to ever live on the earth. And he says, I've watched a lot of things, and if you do all of these things, more than likely, odds are this is going to happen. And so we're going to look for those two things that if we put into our lives, whether we are an embracer of conflict or whether we are an avoider of conflict, if we put those two things in our lives consistently, we're going to find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Now, if you're not interested in favor and good success in the sight of God and man, I have nothing for you today. And so you can take a look at our new worship guide, and you can examine that, and you can color on it, do all you want to, because the majority of us are interested in finding favor and good success in the sight of man. So what is it that we're looking for? Well, when you come back and you read it from the English Standard Version, verse 3 says, let not steadfast love. Let not steadfast love. Now, this is a word that you might be familiar with in the Hebrew. I'm not even going to tell you that because you will be thinking other things when I give you that word. But this word is translated in different ways in different translations. If you have a King James Version, it probably says mercy. It's probably what it says. Other translations are going to say something like loyalty or devotion or something along those lines. The word that we're looking for is this word steadfast love. And here's what it speaks to us in at least our relationships with one another. If you are an embracer of conflict, you more than anybody else need to approach that relationship with steadfast love. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you are an embracer in your relationships and in your conversations, the goal for you is to win. That's your goal if you're an embracer. You go into that relationship, you go into that confrontation, you go into that conflict, and your goal is to win. And so you are trying to get your point across. And it doesn't matter to you if you say it once or if you say it 50 times or if the decibel level of your volume goes up or you take a baseball bat. You are interested in getting your point across more than anything else in that conversation. That's what your goal, that's your motivation. In fact, you're okay if they get mad at you because that kind of makes you feel like, hey, I kind of won this thing. If they walked away and steamed and they go, and they walk away, you go, ta-da. They're not reasonable people. That's what you think to yourself. But the person on the other side going, no, wait a minute. You are so interested in your truth that you have no interest in me as an individual and you have no interest in our relationship because the relationship is secondary to you and all you care is about winning. And the Scripture speaks to that. The Scripture says that if you're going to have conflict with someone, when you approach that conflict, you must have a steadfast love where you are more concerned about the relationship rather than winning the argument. Now that's hard for an embracer to realize and to deal with because the embracer wants to get his point across. And so I've got a little phrase here for you today. If you are an embracer, when you get involved in conflict with somebody else, what you need to think and what you need to say maybe to yourself is that you need to seek to understand before being understood. Does that make sense to you? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that? So many times in our relationships, we want to get our point across first because we've already been working on that. Anybody good at having conversations by yourself that go really well, and then you begin to talk to that person and it doesn't quite go as well? You know what I'm talking about? You practice what you're going to say. You know, okay, then I'm going to say this, and we'll think about that, and then we'll bring up this point, and all that kind of stuff. And then you step into the relationship, that conversation, and you go, has that ever happened to you? Well, part of that is a fear that in that relationship, you're worried about what's going to be the result. If you are an embracer, what you have to do is you have to bite your tongue, and you have to sit there and go, you know what? Before I give you my point, I want to hear your point. And not only do I want to hear your point, but I want to understand your point. Now, it's okay to still be thinking, well, they're wrong. That's okay, kind of, all right, as long as you don't say that. What you need to be going is, I need to understand you before I can respond to you, because oftentimes we build up what are called straw men arguments, and we look at their arguments and say they're all straw men. We're just going to attack them in debate. But what you don't understand is what that person is trying to say to you is very important to them, and really it's important to you if you value that relationship. So if you are an embracer and you've got a point to make, what you need to do is to have a steadfast love, a love that doesn't change. Steadfast, that's what it means. It can mean kind of a loyalty is what sometimes it means. That you're going to look at them and you're going to say, you know what, I care about this person so much that I don't have to be right. In fact, when people ask my wife, what is the success of our marriage, whatever success is, she would go, well, I've learned to forgive quickly. Learn to forgive quickly and not worry about who's right. That's because I'm always right. So that's the reason she has to do that, because she doesn't understand. No, I'm not always right. But you understand that if you're trying to win every argument, you will lose the relationship. If you try to prove your point and prove your superior, you will lose every single time. And you think you're winning as an embracer, but you're not, because everybody has left because they don't feel steadfast love. So in your relationships, even if you're right, and the embracer is always right, otherwise they're not going to embrace conflict, you have to recognize that what is right is the relationship. It matters more than who is right in that. Does that make sense? Now, there's only probably 2 or 3 embracers, so we need to get to the avoiders and understand what we're supposed to have. Here's what the rest of that verse says. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. King James says, I think, mercy and truth. Other translations talk about this is what is right, what is true, what is correct. That second Hebrew word there can mean any one of those things, and based upon the translation, you can look at how that is. But the word that we're looking for here is that word faithfulness. And here's what the avoider has to realize. The avoider doesn't want to have conflict because they are afraid of damaging the relationship. They're afraid that if they say something, it's going to damage the relationship. And so what they do is they try to tiptoe around those things that might be controversial so that they might be able to maintain the relationship. Have you ever sat around Thanksgiving dinner with people that you don't normally sit with Thanksgiving dinner around, and you know that there is an embracer at the table, and you know that it's not you, and so what you do is you avoid anything that might even look like conflict because you are concerned that everybody is happy around the Thanksgiving dinner table rather than actually having any truth content exposed to one another. Is that just me, or do you know what I'm talking about there? So you keep your mouth shut is what you do, right? And you've got an embracer, and they're embracing conflict, and you're just sitting there going, what time the Cowboys play? What time was that now? Okay, can I take this to go, which is not good for Thanksgiving dinner? Can I take my Thanksgiving dinner to go? No, you're supposed to sit here, and so you're just avoiding it. La-di-da-di-da. You're just waiting them out, right? Because you're not going to bring anything up because you are more concerned about the relationships around the table than who's right. You're like this, right? the problem with that is, to some degree, when you do that, remember, we're supposed to bind these things around our neck, write them on the tablet of our hearts, that we remember those things, and that focus is faithfulness. And what you have to say is, and maybe the Thanksgiving dinner table is not the right place. In fact, I am sure that it's not the right place, because that can devolve into a food fight very quickly. So that's not the time to bring up the conflict. But if all you're doing is avoiding conflict, you've got to recognize that you're not being faithful, you're not being true to that person. Can I be just a little, well, I don't know if I should be gross or not. Let me try another. Have you ever seen somebody, hang on just a second, have you ever seen anybody that did not zip their pants up? Right? And it's seen and it's known by everybody, and you're trying to figure out how to tell the person that their pants are unzipped. Right? That's the reason you see me grab like this. I am testing the top of my zipper. That's what you see when you see me. And you can't tell that, but you put your hand right there in your buckle, and you got your pinky, and then you go, yeah, the zipper's right there. So that's one of my little tricks now. You know, you'll be distracted every time I go this way, won't you? All right. But that's what it is. But have you ever struggled with going, we should tell them, but how do you tell them? Right? Now, if you don't like the person, you don't care about the relationship, what do? You don't tell them, right? In fact, you point out to other people, hey, guess what? Look. And if you don't care about the relationship, that's what you do. You take pictures, you post it on the internet. That's kind of the things that you do if you don't care about the relationship. But if you care about that relationship, you know you've got to be faithful and do something to help out that person, right? Because you care about them. And so you figure a way out that is nonchalant, that is whatever it is, and you try to figure that out, and you've done those things. I'm not going to explain it to you. But you are trying to do that because you know if you don't, you're not being a friend to them. Because what's going to happen when that person finds out, and they're going to come down and say, you mean you knew that and you didn't tell me? What kind of friend are you? And then you're going to be concerned because you avoided all that. So what that means for us avoiders is we have to pick our battles well, pick them quietly, pick them nice, right in the side, whatever it is, but you have to be faithful to the relationship because you are cheating that person if you don't. And some of you are in relationships where you've shut down and you've said, I can't deal with this anymore. Can't deal with that. When you do that, you leave unresolved conflict and that relationship is going to die. See, conflict is not always negative. Conflict is not always bad. We think of conflict as evil and somehow wrong. It is not. In fact, if it were, the scriptures wouldn't talk about it. And if you read through the New Testament, there was all kind of conflict. In fact, Jesus came and said, I've actually come not to make everybody happy, but to what? Set brother and sister and mother and father against each other. He riled up the Pharisees and he challenged them. There's all kinds of things that we can look at. But if we're a avoider, we are cheating them if we don't approach them in our relationship. And remember, why are we doing all this? Why are we getting involved? So that we will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. It is worth it. Do you know relationships are worth fighting over? A good relationship is worth fighting over. And you know what? Sometimes men, our wives will talk to us and we'll go, I don't want to talk about it. Can we talk about this? No, we can't talk about it. Do you know what you're doing? You are killing your relationship. Sometimes I see it the other way, where the man is embracing all the conflict. Let's just fight about this. We fought about this last night. We didn't get any resolution. Let's fight about it again. No, not just to fight, to fight, but if you have steadfast love and faithfulness together, you can manage the conflict in your relationships. So let's put all this together. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness, okay? If you're an embracer, steadfast love, steadfast love, steadfast love, okay? And faithfulness. If you're an avoider, faithfulness. I'm cheating them if I don't talk about this. I'm cheating them if I don't talk about this. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Now, there's some other great resources that are out there about how you do this and how you have to enter into negotiation and mediation and all those kind of things. If you're in a situation that you can't get any conflict, there's a pretty good book out there called Peacemakers. I think it's by David Sand or David Sandy, I think is the name, Sande. And he's got this slippery slope of conflict resolution, of peacemaking, because if we're not careful, we can go to one side or the other in our relationship. Instead of negotiation and mediation and conversation, that's how you resolve conflict, is conversation. If you're not there, you can slide to the side that you are aggressive or slide to the side that you're avoiding, and you can mess up all the relationships. There's a right way and a wrong way to do this. And so be careful how you approach that. I'm not just saying, confront somebody in the hallway before Sunday school, probably not a good time to have conflict, but approach that knowing that steadfast love and faithfulness are the key to resolving conflict. Now, just got a couple of minutes left. What do you fill the last couple of minutes with? Well, you fill it with this. Every one of us had a conflict that was probably the greatest of all conflicts. And no, it's not with your spouse, it's not with your teenage son or daughter, not with your grandson or granddaughter, because they're perfect, right? Where's that greatest conflict? Well, the Bible tells us that the greatest conflict is between God and us. Because of our sin nature that we have inherited from Adam, and then our affirmation of that sin nature by sinning has created the greatest of conflicts in all the universe. It's not between one corporation and another corporation. It's not between one country and another country. The greatest conflict is between God and man. And some of you have no idea that just because you're born does not mean that you and God are best friends. And sometimes I'm concerned that we sometimes will sing songs and we don't recognize that for the believer that song is true. But if you have not trusted Christ, that is not applicable to you. Because, see, the scripture tells us that God showed his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ did something for us. He died for us. Do you see the balance of steadfast love and faithfulness? He didn't just say, well, you're not going to be good enough and you're in trouble. He actually went and did something. His steadfast love for us caused him to engage in this great conflict, which meant that Christ left heaven, who would, in a perfect environment, to come live among us and was punished and died, brutal death, murdered for you and I. And the least that you and I can do in our earthly relationships is to fight a little bit with steadfast love and faithfulness so that we don't have unresolved conflict. I started thinking about this verse this week. And it says that Christ died for us while we were still sinners. In fact, some of your translations, and some of them I prefer, actually say while we were still enemies. You have a translation that says, well, you didn't let you open your Bibles today, so you don't know. But some of you have Bibles that say while we were still enemies, he died for us. And I started thinking about that. That if it was between me living and my wife living, a big bus coming and we're there, and you're always worried about how you're going to die. So it's a big bus. And so you're thinking, if I'm there, am I going to push my wife out of the way and take the hit of the bus and die so that she might live? And I'm like, yeah, I would do that. I would do that without even thinking about it. I've got enough insurance. She can marry somebody nice, not just rich. And so it's okay for me to push her out of the way. All right? I would do that. If it was my own kids, would I do that? Yeah, I would do that. I'd push them out of the way. Would I do that for one of our church members? It's like, I'd probably just pause long enough for the bus to hit him and go, oh, I was thinking about it. I was trying to decide whether it's going to. Would I do that for a church member who left our church and went to another church because they don't like me? No, wouldn't do that at all. No, probably not. But that's not even an enemy, is it? So I'm trying to think about what would be an enemy for us. When Christ is saying that he's died for an enemy, which is often the translations say is sinners, an enemy, that would be like me dying for some Al-Qaeda fighter who had pledged his life to destroy us and our way of life. Would I do that? And I'm thinking, absolutely not. And yet, Christ did. And even much more radical than that. While we were still enemies, while we were still sinners, he doesn't excuse our sin. He just doesn't wave a magic wand and say, okay, everybody can come in free. I just forget about all the things I said about holiness and all that truth. Forget about that. I'll just wave all that. Everybody come in. He didn't do that. He sent his own son to come and live a perfect life and to die for us, having the sin of the world, our sin, put on his shoulders so the Father would pour out his wrath upon that. and then transfer to us his righteousness that we might be accepted by God through Christ. You see, that's the greatest conflict that you and I will ever face. And maybe today you've never received that. Today might be your day. Today might be the day that you come to where you say, you know what? I've been at war with God. I didn't realize it. I didn't really want to, but I am. And today I recognize that I can have peace through Christ. Maybe that's you. But you know what? There's a lot of us who still decide to disobey Christ. Who God tells us to do something, and we know we're supposed to do it, but we don't want to do that. We have conflict with God today, not that's unresolvable, but it's kind of shut down on our end because we know God has told us to do something. We know what is right. Maybe it's one of our relationships. Maybe it's to follow him in baptism. Maybe it's to be obedient. And we are having conflict with God because we are refusing his grace and refusing his presence. May today, God's faithfulness to us through Jesus Christ and his steadfast love for us through Jesus Christ convince us to no longer live in unresolved conflict with God, but that we might embrace that and embrace his love and what he's done for us and become obedient. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes this morning? Now, I don't know where you are in your own walk. You could be far away from God. And it could be really open hostility. In fact, you were drugged here by family members or something that you had to do, and so you're here and you don't even want to be here. But maybe today God has penetrated your heart and has been speaking to you. Maybe you don't have no animosity against God. Maybe you're not antagonistic toward God, but maybe what you are is not serving God, never bowing your knee to him. And so today God's saying, come home. I'll forgive you. I've made the way. I've given you a peace offering. All you've got to do is to receive it and come. And so maybe that's you today. But there's others of us, we've got unresolved conflict in our relationships. And for whatever reason, we have not handled them well. We've not had a steadfast love. We've not had faithfulness. Whatever it is, God's speaking to you about that particular relationship. And I'm encouraging you today, in the appropriate place, at the appropriate time, get that conflict resolved. Relationships are worth fighting for. And maybe today there's a relationship that you need to fight for. And this week you'll pick up the phone or you'll have a meeting and you'll sit down and you'll have a conversation. And you'll try to bring healing and resolution to that conflict. Whatever it is today, I'm going to pray for you and ask that all of us in all of our relationships do not live with unresolved conflict, but through steadfast love and faithfulness, that we might resolve conflict for the glory of God. Father, we thank you that you have come to resolve